Well, hi everybody. It's Kathy Drew from Gina's Bernina Sewing Center here in Knoxville, Tennessee. I hope you're having a great day. Today we are going to talk about the Ruffler Foot. The number of the Ruffler Foot for the Bernina machines is number 86. And it's a scary looking guy. And so I thought I would explain a few things about the presser foot and take a little bit of the fear factor out of it for you. I've had mine for quite some time and I've used it quite a bit. So this presser foot is going to actually put tiny little pleats or gathers into your fabric. And how it works and all the different options you have for adjusting the fabric or the ruffler to give you the look you want, I want to cover those with you before we actually do any sewing with it. So the Ruffler Foot has a moving blade. I hope you can see that on the camera. Let me get it down a little bit closer under the light. And this blade is responsible. It goes back, pushes forward, and it grabs the fabric that you want to ruffle and pushes it under the needle so that when the needle takes a stitch, it holds that tiny little pleat or gather in place. And you actually will put your fabric under this sliding blade. For lack of a better word, we'll call it a blade. But you put your fabric under that. The piece that you want to ruffle goes directly underneath that movable blade when you load it up. Okay, now you have some controls for this blade. There is a screw, and when you have the foot on the machine, that screw will be facing you so you can make your adjustments with it. And you're going to take a screwdriver, and the further in you adjust the screw, or the further in you screw it, the longer the shaft of the screw will be past this black holder on it. The further away, or the further out, or the further you unscrew it, you have a different option as well. So the deeper or the further the screw is screwed into the foot, the deeper the pleat you're going to get on your fabric. The further out, or when you unscrew it out of that bracket, then you have less fabric put into the stitch or the pleat. So I've got a little sample to show you. I went ahead and stitched this up because I didn't want you to have to sit and watch me doing all this. And I don't know if you can see it if I show it to you this way, but maybe if I turn it this way, you can see those pleats to see how much fabric has been pushed into them. So you can tell here that there's been quite a bit of fabric folded, and that way when it's stitched down, you get a much fuller look to the ruffle that you're trying to make. So to get this, the screw was screwed further in. Now as we went out, maybe you can see there is less fabric in that ruffle. Okay, so we have less fullness in the fabric. And then as I go even further and I continue to unscrew the screw on the foot, then you get less and less in that stitch. Okay, so if you pull them out and compare them under the light, maybe you can see a little bit better the differences just in adjusting the screw on the presser foot, and it determines the amount of fabric that that blade pushes under the needle. And of course, it uses up more fabric, okay, to create that. And then the straight stitch will just hold it in place. So that's the adjustment that the screw on the presser foot gives you right here, okay? Now there's another adjustment that you can make, and this is in this broad lever here in the front. Now there are numbers for each one of the slots on this presser foot. This slot has the number 1, and what that tells you is that every time the machine takes a single stitch, it is going to push a pleat or a tuck or a gather under the needle with every single stitch. If you're working on heavier fabric and you need your pleats or ruffles or gathers to be further apart, you can set this lever into position 6, and what that will do for you is it simply straight stitches 5 stitches without putting any pleats under the needle, and then pleats only on the 6th stitch. You also have number 12. So number 12 means it's going to straight stitch 11 stitches and only push fabric under the needle on the 12th stitch. Then you have a setting for 0, which is for no fabric being pushed under or no pleats or gathers being made. So let me see if I can give you an example. Let's say you have a square object like maybe a bed ruffle for your bed, and you wanted the sides excuse me, and the bottoms to not have any gathers but only gather or pleat it on the corners. You could leave this foot on, straight stitch down the side, then stop and set it to whatever position you need it to be in. Do your pleating or gathering, stop, and move it back to the 0 setting for no pleating or gathering, and continue sewing. Okay, so that's what this big lever does. Now what's important when you put this presser foot on your machine is this guy. I don't know what exactly to call him, a hook or a tong. He has to fit on top of your needle bar. The needle bar right here, so that when the needle moves up and down, and I'm going to turn it this way so you can see, the needle moving up and down is what will control the movement of the blade on your presser foot. So I've got it set to not even move to make any pleats. So here we go. There's our movement. Needle goes up and down and up and down, and it moves that blue blade according to what slot you have it in here. Okay, so I hope that helps a little. And I've stitched another sample. So here we have the pleating with every single stitch. Okay, then we move to this next section and we have the pleating every 6 stitch. So you can see I've got straight stitches in between each pleat. And then on this end, I have pleated every 12th stitch. And that was determined just by which of the slots I selected on the presser foot. So I hope that'll help you a little bit with it. Now, on my 880 machine, when I go in and tell the machine that I have placed this foot on, it is not going to allow me to use my needle threader. So the rest of you that do not have that option of pre-selecting the presser foot need to be very careful and make sure that you thread your needle before you put the presser foot on. This will prevent your needle threader from hitting the foot. Now, it's not going to probably hurt the foot, but it might interfere with the operation of your needle threader. So before I put my presser foot on, what I'm going to do is tell my machine I want to thread my needle, press my needle threader button, slide the thread into my needle threader, push the button again, and the machine will thread my needle for me, and then I'll be ready. Okey-doke. And then I can put my presser foot on. I just pulled my thread out, so we'll get to thread my needle again. Make sure you grab your loop on the back of the needle. Don't let it hang on your finger on the front or you'll pull it out like I did. Alrighty, so now we're going to put this presser foot on. You have the same looking shaft as you do on your other presser feet, and it goes of course to the back so you can put it on, And what I generally do is I just tilt it so that I can get him on there. Just tilt him a little bit to the side, and I scoop that up onto the shaft of the machine, making sure at the same time that I position this hook to where my needle holder is there to grab it. Okay, let me get my hand out of the way a little bit so y'all can see that maybe a little bit better. Why don't I see if I can zoom in too, because this is one of the things that scares people about it. So, and I'll turn my flywheel just a smidge so maybe you can see. Here is the hook, and it is around the screw for my needle. Okay, maybe y'all can see that a little bit better. And then I'm going to fasten him in place. Now another thing too, when you set on the 880 and some of your other machines that require you to tell it what presser foot you have on, it will automatically put restrictions on the needle movement. So in other words, if you have that option on your machine, it's not going to allow you to accidentally zigzag or use a needle position that will hit your ruffler. Now your ruffler is a straight stitch only presser foot, and it uses the center needle position. So on those machines that give you the option of telling it what presser foot you are using, the machine itself will automatically set those features for you. If you don't have those options on your machine, you must remember not to move your needle position. Always use center needle position, and always use a straight stitch, because if you set a zigzag, it's going to hit your presser foot and it will damage the presser foot. So you want to make sure that you only use a straight stitch in center needle position. Okay, I hope you can see. I am going to slip my fabric, and here's the moving blade. All right, the blade that moves is what's going to gather or pleat our fabric for us. I am going to position the fabric that I want to gather or pleat under the movable blade, and you may notice also I pull that blade out toward me, and that makes it a little bit easier for you to glide your fabric in. And I'm kind of going in at an angle, and then I begin to straighten it up as I go toward the back. Now the foot gives you a lot of areas that you can choose what width of seam allowance you want. But one thing you have to know is once you slide that fabric in, if you try to pull it out by pulling toward you, the teeth of that bar are going to dig into that fabric and not let you do that. So if you have to remove it, you must slide it out from the back. And you know, I think while I've got that fabric out, I'm going to adjust my screw. I'm going to screw it in about halfway in, so that I've got maybe 1/8 of an inch of that screw head extending out past the black holder. Oh, I got it dirty. Let's go on this side. Now, slide the fabric under the moving blade, and I'll just go ahead and position it way over here so you can see. All right, now I've got my machine set for a straight stitch. An adjustment that you can make here is this. The machine, the way I have it set, I have set it to take a gather or tuck at every single stitch. So the further apart my stitches are taking, meaning the longer the stitch length, the further apart from each other those pleats or gathers will be. And so that's your final adjustment. So you've got a lot of variation with this presser foot. You can adjust the depth of each pleat. You can even get a gathered look by adjusting that screw if you don't want a tuck look. You can also adjust when it takes the gather or the pleat, and you can adjust how far apart by using your stitch length it places those. So I'm going to put it just to start off, at 3.5, 3.5 on a stitch length of a straight stitch, and then I'm just going to take a couple of stitches. It's asking me, what presser foot do you have on your machine? So I forgot to tell it, so I'm going to go in and tell it I have on number 86, and it is going to automatically know that I cannot move my needle position and I cannot set it for a zigzag with this presser foot, and I never have to worry about accidentally doing that. And that's on my Bernina 880 Plus that I'm sewing on. So alright, so see how you got some movement? This is the blade coming back, pushing under a tiny little tuck with every single stitch. And like I said, I screwed the screw in on it about halfway to get this depth. On this weight of fabric, different weights of fabric will affect how it looks and how you have to adjust that screw. I'm going to adjust my stitch length now to 6 to move those pleats a little further apart from each other. And that uses a little less fabric, and you'll have a little less fullness because there won't be as many pleats put in there. I think I had it on 3.5. I don't want to go down too short because then it might stack it all on top, but I think it's going to do it. I think it's going to feed it. And you can see on this side how it's trying to flip this over, but this piece that you see here will prevent it from getting caught in your stitching, so you won't have to worry about that happening. Alright, so we have ruffled up a piece right there. So see, even though these edges were flipping over, they're not caught in my stitching at all. Alright, see the difference? This is a stitch length of 3.5. Let me zoom back just a little. I always go the wrong direction when I'm zooming. So this is 3.5. This was 6. Down through here, and then I went down to 2 on this, so you can see it's really squished those in there together. Isn't that cool? I love this foot. I use it a lot. This is great for home deck. Now you can gather and attach with this presser foot. Once again, you have to use a formula. You have to get it set up to give you the look or the amount of gathers that you want. That's important. And then take a given length of fabric to see what your settings gather it down to, and then you just do a little bit of math. If you gathered up a 12-inch piece of fabric, gathered it down to 6 inches, then you'll need twice as much fabric to fit on your item. And just do your math. If it gathers it down to 3 inches, you'll need 4 times as much. The part that I want to gather will go underneath the movable blade. You'll see 2 blades on this foot, but only one of them moves, if that will help you. And then generally at this point, I go ahead and put the foot in the down position. The next piece of fabric will go on top of the moving blade. No, I think I better leave that up. I can't get it under this other piece. Perfect. Alrighty. And I'm going to get my needle thread where I know where it is. And we're going to do a little bit of gathering and attaching at the same time. And here we go. And once again, you're going to see that lower piece of fabric feed in there much faster. The fabric's going to be moving much faster than the top. And this fabric that I'm working on is actually Kona cotton. Oh my gosh, that's so pretty. I love how it looks. This is great. Just think of all the home deck projects you can do with this. Now we've used this on garments because ruffles are really popular on some of the children's clothes. We've made little ruffles on the bottom of a child's pants legs, just anything like that you can use this for. You can ruffle or gather ribbon with it, run the stitching right down the center of maybe a 2-inch wide piece of grosgrain ribbon, and it will pleated up on both sides. There's all kinds of uses for this, and I'm sure that you can find a lot of those samples. If you ever have the opportunity to come into the shop, you can find a lot of those samples in the store as well. Now, one thing I meant to do, and I totally forgot, was if you wanted to have a double fold ruffle, and what I mean by that is that it creates a finished edge if you double fold it. You might want to stitch the top layer together first before you run it through the ruffler, so that it will gather both pieces of fabric as one. So before I ever run it through the ruffler, if I was going to do like a double fold ruffle, then I would definitely straight stitch those top edges together, and then that way when it feeds through, that top blade won't grab that top layer and feed it faster than the bottom. Okay, so I think that's pretty self-explanatory to tell you that. The other thing I wanted to tell you too is that you have a wide range of fabric thickness that you can use with this ruffler. Now I probably will back off my screw a little bit, and I don't really have any drapery fabric here at home, but what I do have is a thick piece of felt, and I thought I would show you that it will gather this felt and attach it. So I am going to make my pleats a little bit further apart, and I think I've even gathered a piece up. My sewing room has gotten so messy. So you can see I ran this through it, so you can gather it very close together, or this is a prime example of where it might be so thick that you don't want the pleats overlapping each other, and you can use the lever on the top of the foot to set those pleats a distance apart. So that's an option, but let me show you that this foot can accommodate that. So the piece that is to be gathered goes under the moving blade, just like always. And let's see what kind of trouble we can get into with this setting. There we go. And this is a heavy piece of felt, and it has no problem with it at all. And if you want it to gather and attach, it will handle that also. I should have cut another piece so I could show you this, so I may have to go in at an angle because I've got my thread already on there. Let's see if I can wiggle it in, and it will gather and attach. So the thickness of the fabric is no problem for this presser foot. And what I've always told people too is if you're thinking about using the ruffler on a very lightweight or fine piece of fabric, you might want to run a test on it before you do it. This moving blade does have some teeth with sharp points in it, so your delicate fabrics or trims or laces, you want to run a test first and make sure that those teeth that actually grab your fabric and push it under the presser foot don't do any damage to the material or the trim that you're working on. So once again, I hope that helped you guys a little bit to where you won't be afraid of this fabulous accessory. This is a wonderful foot to have in your stash so that you can accommodate any item that you're wanting to do, whether it's home deck or a garment, you can use it on. There are so many uses for it. I just showed you mainly how the foot operates to make you feel a little more comfortable with having one. The Bernina Ruffler is made of high quality. I have had others. This one is definitely going to last you a lifetime. You will not have to worry about that. And if you should have any other questions, I hope you know how to reach us at ginasbernina.com or info@ginasbernina.com with a question. And listen, please, if you would, please like and share these videos and help us out. We're trying to make it through, and that would help us immensely. And subscribe to our channel. And if you subscribe, be sure and hit the little bell so you'll get a notification for whenever we post a new video. We're going to expand our videos. Right now we're just working on the presser feet, but keep tuned in because we're going to be expanding them to sewing technique and lots of other things. We're just beginning, so we need your help to get popular. So take care, everybody. This has been so much fun for me. I hope it helped you. Please post any comments. I'll be checking them to see if there's anything I can help you with. Take care, and we'll see you soon.